Do you remember Blade Trinity when it first came out and how everybody hated it? Well, I'm here to see if it still sucks or if it's better than you remember. I'm inside and I saw Blade Trinity. It is written and directed by David S. Goyer, and if you haven't seen this movie, I will spoil it for you. This movie starts with following Blade as he gets framed by a bunch of vampires, and of course when he gets framed he gets arrested, but then conveniently he gets broken out and he meets a couple of people. Immediately at this point I'm like, okay, I can follow what's happening visually on screen, and from scene to scene to scene and in between the scenes, it makes sense. It really does make sense to me. So I'm like, okay, this isn't terrible. However, this kind of feels like the other Blade movies, definitely the first one, for sure. There's a formula going on, and I don't even remember what happens in Blade 2, so I'm not going to be referencing that movie. By my own standards, in terms of rememberability, this one is more memorable than the second one, so in my mind, this is a better movie already. Anyway, Blade gets framed, and he has to kill a bunch of vampires. That's like the first movie, that's like the second movie, and it for sure is this movie. However, in this one, the vampires are a little bit more smart than the previous ones, and the vampires don't come in hordes to attack Blade. Instead, they're using the government, and instead they're using social power to keep a hold of Blade, but luckily, that does not stop Blade. He's able to get around all of the things that make it so he can't do the vampire killing like he wants to constantly, until later in the movie, when he does discover the vampire's plan, which is to keep kidnapping people and putting this in this blood farm. No good. There's just so many people hooked up to this blood farm, and I'm like, oh wow, this is wild, this is incredibly sadistic. It's exactly what I expect from a vampire. Vampires in this universe seem to be very ruthless individuals. They seem more ruthless in this one than they do in the other ones. It also makes me wonder, how long have they been keeping this blood farm going? Obviously, vampires are smarter than humans. A lot smarter. In this movie, it seems like everybody who is human, who is not Blade, who isn't working with Blade, are like, oh, if vampires existed, wouldn't we just see one? I'm like, no, you wouldn't actually, because they want to stay in the dark. And people who do know vampires exist, it's always too late for them because they get eaten by the vampire or they get kidnapped by the vampire, taken to this blood farm. I feel like the blood farm part of this movie is the best part. So the middle part is Blade discovering what dirty things the vampires are doing, some Blade and vampire fighting, and then they back off, and then they wait until the third act, until they have a big old fight, and Blade lets out everybody in the blood farm. It makes me wonder how long they've been blooded upon and if they could even be alive still because they've been hooked up to this blood farm. Where are the nutrients? Where are the IV packs? It doesn't seem like these vampires are doing a great job at this blood farm because I see none of that. I only see humans in these plastic things with parts for their waste off to the side, but nothing coming in. Peculiar. What are they feeding these guys? I don't know. Doesn't really explain in the movie. It just shows that the vampires have a blood farm. Makes sense to me. They would have to be farming because they're smarter than humans, and humans discovered agriculture a while ago. So they probably discovered agriculture of humans before humans discovered agriculture. But this movie doesn't explain when vampires existed, really. Blade's able to defeat a lot of these vampires, but some vampires just kind of scurry off into the darkness, and Blade just leaves, and he's able to continue on fighting. That's pretty much the movie. That's all you need to know about Blade Trinity. Anything that happens in the middle isn't relevant. You don't need to know about it at all. You know, with how formulaic this movie is, it's a refreshing formula because Blade 2 didn't really follow it and it's not memorable at all because of it. This one I can remember what happens. They have a blood farm, that's pretty cool. And they have to dismantle this blood farm. It also explains vampire agriculture, vampire culture, society. I want to learn more about vampires. Also, I should mention that Blade makes an appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. And you know what he says? He's like, oh, those guys, they be ice skating uphill. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he said the thing. He said it. He said the thing. Oh my goodness, you can't believe it. He said the thing. This movie, other than what I said, is whatever. It's kind of boring to watch. Although my eyes were glued onto the screen the entire time. Not that boring, I guess, but, you know, still some boring parts that I didn't really care about too much. And honestly, watching this movie just makes me want to watch the first Blade again. So I gotta give this movie, based on just its weird editing too, I should mention. I don't know, it just felt too quick. It felt like the editing was on a formulaic, oh, we gotta cut every 3 seconds because there's a YouTube video before YouTube existed. Or something like that. There's always just too many freaking cuts. And it makes it so I'm not so immersed in the movie like I could be. I could be more immersed, but I'm not. So I gotta give this movie, it's a solid 5 out of 10. If you like this review, watch another one on the platform who likes that. Go to patreon.com/ASUpresents for a $20 Dino a month for 1 movie review for 1 month. Go to linktr.ee/titswithsalad. Go here. Look at it right here. Go to it. It helps support the daily grindiness of all the daily movies. So go here. And until next time, I'm mint salad sauce. See you later, my salad croutons, bacon bits. You know, I'm really glad that vampires don't exist. Oh, is that a vampire bat? Looks pretty in the distance. Oh wait, it's coming towards me. No, don't get me. I don't want to be bit.